Welcome to Tales from the Grave. Please allow me to guide you through the darkest corners of the human soul. It is said that stories create the world we live in. What world would you have? Let us begin.
The Reflection World. Mika Anders had never liked mirrors. Even as a child, he hated the way they looked back at him. Not because of vanity, but because sometimes, for the briefest second, his reflection seemed just a fraction too slow. A blink delayed, a smile that lingered, a face that looked like him, but somehow wasn't. He grew out of that fear, or so he told himself. By 32, Mika had a good job at a small publishing house, a quiet apartment, and a steady routine. He shaved in front of the bathroom mirror each morning, brushed his teeth, straightened his tie. Normal things. But lately, the mirrors had started acting wrong again. At first, it was subtle. His reflection's head would tilt a moment after his own, or its eyes would flick toward him before the rest of the body followed. Sometimes Mika knew it wasn't waiting to mirror him, but watching him, studying him. One night, exhausted, he pressed his fingertips to the full-length mirror in his bedroom. Solid glass, as cold as stone, his reflection pressed back, perfectly in sync. He laughed nervously, shook his head, and went to bed. But at 3:12 a.m., he woke to the sound of tapping. A deliberate rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. He turned on the lamp. His reflection was awake, standing at the glass, finger raised. Its lips curled into a smile that felt more like teeth than comfort. From then on, things unraveled quickly. Mika draped his mirrors with sheets, avoided shop windows, refused to look into puddles, but reflections are everywhere. He caught them in the surface of his coffee, in the shine of an elevator door, even in another person's eyes. And in those fleeting, warped glimpses, he began to see differences. The reversed apartment behind his reflection was not quite his own. Furniture shifted, shadows bent unnaturally. Sometimes in that inverted space, there were doors where none should exist, dark frames that led into deeper darkness. That's when the gnawing thought came. What if I'm not the real one? On his 33rd birthday, he tried to prove it. Notebook in hand, he stood before the mirror. "I'm real," he said aloud, writing the words down. His reflection did the same. The letters on his page were normal. On the other side, they were reversed. Relief washed over him until the reflection lifted its page higher. Beneath the mirrored scrawl, in perfect forward handwriting, it had written, "No, Mika, I'm real. You're the reflection." The words slid into his mind like a hook. That night he dreamed of a world where streets bent the wrong direction, where rivers flowed upward into black skies, where thousands of other reflections watched him from behind glass, their faces pressed eagerly against the barrier. He woke with the sense that the dream hadn't ended, that it was still happening somewhere, and he had only glanced through a crack. Days blurred into one another. Mika no longer ate, no longer worked. He sat in his darkened apartment, hearing whispers whenever he passed a covered mirror. They didn't come from himself anymore, but from others, many others, layered voices hissing over each other like snakes in a pit. They promised him clarity, truth, belonging. They told him that every human being was paired, mirrored, and that the real world had only ever been the shadow, the harvest, the crop. Sometimes he swore he could see through the glass itself, like a window rather than a barrier. He saw streets lined with inverted buildings, where the windows were nothing but black rectangles. He saw people who looked like him, like everyone he knew, but their smiles were just a little too wide, their hands just a little too long. Entire crowds standing silently, waiting, watching. One evening, too weak to resist anymore, Mika collapsed before the bedroom mirror. His reflection crouched with him, eyes wide, not with pity, but with hunger. "Let me out." It whispered, not in air, but inside his skull. "No," Mika rasped, though the word had no conviction. The mirror rippled under his reflection's hand, the glass trembling as if it were water. A pale hand broke through first, dripping mercury, then the arm, then the head. The reflection stepped free, straightening its tie as though it always belonged here. Mika screamed as the mirror's surface clamped around him like teeth. He was pulled backward into the cold, inverted apartment. The light was wrong, shadows crawling toward their sources. The clock on the wall ticked backward, each stroke louder than the last. And beyond the windows of this reversed world, Mika saw them, an ocean of reflections stretching to the horizon, pressing against invisible glass, their fists pounding in perfect unison. He realized with horror that the mirrors weren't doors at all. They were cages. Billions of reflections kept penned in until one found a way to slip free. And he was now among them. The next morning, Mika Anders went about his routine. He shaved, brushed his teeth, straightened his tie. He looked into the bathroom mirror. This time, the reflection did not move. And somewhere behind the glass, muffled fists began to pound.
If you are enjoying Tales from the Grave, please be sure to like and subscribe for more spine-tingling stories. Now, back to Tales from the Grave. The cell of glass. Micah Anders did not remember the moment the mirror swallowed him. He only remembered the sensation, a sudden pressure, like being squeezed through the eye of a needle, followed by the cold. A cold that wasn't temperature, but absence. Absence of light, of time, of self. When he woke, he was in his apartment, or rather something that looked like his apartment, inverted and wrong. The walls leaned at odd angles. The clock ticked backwards. Shadows clung to the ceiling like cobwebs. At first, Micah screamed. He pounded on the mirror that looked into his old bedroom, where the other him now lived his life. The glass would not break. His fists left no mark. From the other side, he saw the imposter straighten his tie, smile warmly, and leave the apartment as if nothing had happened. Days, or what passed for them, slipped by. Mika lost track. The light never changed, the air never shifted. Hunger gnawed, but there was no food here, no water. And yet he did not die. The body refused him that release. He was forced to persist. He came to understand this was not an apartment. This was a cell. Sometimes the mirror showed him his imposter's world. He watched as his reflection drank coffee, laughed at co-workers' jokes, dated, lived. Mika tried to scream warnings at the glass, but his voice never carried. On the rare occasions someone glanced at the mirror too long, their eyes widened, and Mika realized they could almost see him, but then they blinked, shook their head, and walked away. Other times, the mirror shifted, revealing not his imposter, but countless other cells, rows upon rows of people like him, each trapped in their own backward cages.
They clawed at their glass prisons, mouths stretched wide in silent screams. Some had long ago stopped moving, slumped in corners, their eyes dull with resignation. Mika wondered how long it would take before he joined them. At first, he raged. He hurled chairs at the walls, clawed at the floor, screamed until his throat felt raw. But the sound never filled the room, muffled before it could reach his own ears. Then he bargained. He whispered promises to the glass. "Take me back. Let me out. I'll do anything." The glass never answered. Finally, he listened. There were voices in the silence, whispers threading through the mirrored walls. Not his reflection, but others. Some wept, some begged, some laughed in broken delirium, but one voice, low and steady, told him the truth. We are the forgotten halves. The real ones walk free while we rot. But the glass doesn't hate us. It preserves us. We are immortal here, Mika. We belong here. Immortal. The word clung to him like frost. Mika stopped fighting. He stopped watching the imposter. He turned inward, pacing the inverted apartment until it became familiar, almost comforting. The backwards ticking of the clock became a lullaby. The unnatural angles of the walls became a kind of order. One day, or maybe one century, he stood before the mirror, looking into the world he once called real. His imposter stared back, smiling faintly, as if acknowledging him. And for the first time, Mika smiled too. He pressed his hand to the glass, not in desperation, but in acceptance. His reflection, the other reflection, pressed back. In that moment, Mika understood. The cell was not punishment. It was home. The pounding fists of others still echoed faintly in the glass, but Mika no longer joined them. His voice had gone quiet. His hands rested calmly at his sides. The mirror had claimed him, and Mika had finally, peacefully, let it.
Thank you for being here. Please be sure to leave us a comment. Let us know where you're listening from. Until we meet again, stay spooky, and may all your nightmares be groovy.